Hey everyone, Selwyn here from WynnStrength.com, bringing you another training vlog video. Today's going to be another start of a new week, so we're doing obviously squats as the main exercise and deadlift as our accessory movements for today. Well, deadlift and squats, I like to combine the two, mainly because of space and the equipment I have available. So we're starting off with the squats, jumps and pull-off press superset. If you've been following along, you know that I've gone from high reps to medium reps, now doing low reps, whilst keeping the volume, the working reps the same for the last two blocks. So we went from 5x5 to 8x3, so 25 and 24, we're really just dropping down one rep, not a huge difference. But we are splitting that up into 8 sets of heavy triples so that we can really increase the weights that we've used along the way and drive some more adaptations that way. And we're going to be wrapping up with deadlift squat accessories, with some block deadlifts, some planks and some squats with an SSB bar. Then we're flip-flopping the reps there, so we're doing 3x8, drive a little bit more volume in, focus on that time under tension and get a little bit more blood pumping through the muscles. So we're getting towards the end of this. I have been trying to figure out my arm placement with the barbell today, just trying to figure out and alleviate some of the shoulder issues I've had, which I'm 90% sure is stemming from the squat bar place positioning. So we're trying to play around with that. It really just manifests itself during the bench press, so time will tell to see if I'm actually fixing it or not, and it's not going to be an instant fix. So again, something to work on. There's always something to work on, and we'll see how the rest of this workout goes. So being squat day, I figured I'd go over a couple of tips that I found to help me increase my squat. My last time I tested the squat for 1 rep max, it was around 460. Today we're working at 415 for the final sets of the heavy triples, close to an RPE like 8.5, 9. So speaking for someone that's pushing this amount of weight, I thought I'd help and provide you some advice as to what I found has helped me recently. And the biggest thing, I guess the first thing would obviously be technique. If squat is the king of the exercise, technical aptitude is probably going to be the king of all the tips. You always want to be looking at ways to improve your squat technique. And this won't be how to squat, because there are a lot of videos like that. And I personally am not a squat technician, so there are a lot of people out there that can train the squat a lot better than I can and have way more nuanced explanations about how the squat works. But basically you want to study those people, just do a quick YouTube search. Look up Google as well, there's a lot of good write-ups, some diagrams and whatnot, and they'll go over what goes into a good and solid squat, because you notice after watching a lot, after reading and watching a lot, you'll understand there are like some basic principles that go into squatting and how they can apply to you, because there isn't one right way to squat. No matter what people are going to tell you, there's a million different ways to perform a squat. Ask 1,000 coaches, you're probably going to get 3,000 different responses as to how to squat. And that's just because of the basic nature of it's a physical movement. People move differently, people learn differently, people have different limb lengths, different movement patterns, different ways that they learn and adapt to skill sets that are required of them. So with that in mind, what you want to do is find the perfect squat technique for you. And that's going to take trial and error. Much like any other lift, the squat's probably one of the more complex ones, just because a lot of moving parts. You're going up and down. It's not like a deadlift where you can just pick it up off the floor. There's a lot of things go into it. It's quite a technical movement for how basic it is. And it is a basic human lift. Every time we sit down, we go to the toilet, we pick something up. We're in essence squatting down for the most part. So it's really something we need to dial in and always work on that technique, because it's something that I've found has helped me a lot. When I look back at videos from me like 3 years ago squatting, hell even 10 years ago squatting, it's a huge difference, and that's taken 5-10 years to perfect that. And even now my squat isn't perfect, but it's something I'm constantly working on, and I think the more I work on it, the better I get. Whether that's the better I get because I work on it more, it doesn't really matter. Just the fact that you need to practice and you need to really dial in that technique that you're using. And trial and error is really going to be the best way to do it. Hiring a coach is going to help you too, because they'll be able to see things that you can't. If you can't get a coach, learn as much as you can, videotape yourself and rewatch it. That way you can figure out what's you're doing right, what's you're doing wrong, and how to address that next time. So that's probably tip number 1. Tip number 2 will be breathing, bracing, tension, and then balance. I think those are the three things that will really help you learn more, because these are things that almost everyone can agree on. You really want to be braced, you want to breathe correctly and brace correctly. So that means you want to take in as much oxygen as you can and brace the core as much as you can as well. Whether that be expanding out, expanding in, preparing for a punch. There's a lot of different ways to explain bracing the core, but really you want to have as much tension in the body as possible, all the way from the shoulders all the way down to the legs, because the more tension you have, the easier that squat feels. If you ever want to try this, do it with an empty bar. Try and pick the bar up as relaxed as possible, and it just feels awkward, it doesn't feel good. There's a lot of power leakages everywhere whenever you move. It's like there's a lot of looseness in the lift, whereas a squat, when you start getting heavier weights, you really want to be as tense as possible. You want to drive up that blood pressure, you want to really focus in and make every muscle in the body as tense as possible. And that's just going to make the bar feel super light. If you do it with an empty bar, the bar almost disappears because you're tensing up so much that the bar is almost weightless, because you have so much mass and muscle in the body exerting itself onto an empty bar. Now think about that when you go squat with a heavy weight on your back. You can understand where this technical aspect really comes to the front, and you really want to focus on staying tight and braced under that heavy load. And the last part of that little tip is to maintain balance. You always want to maintain balance over the midfoot. You might hear people talk about weight on the heels, weight on the toes, and that might be cues for certain lifters, because if you're used to squatting on the toes, someone might tell you to squat more. Sorry, if you're used to squatting on your heels, just because that's the way you've been taught, whereas you should be squatting in the midfoot, someone might cue you to move your weight to your toes. That doesn't mean you actually want to move your weight to your toes. It just means shift that weight to feel like you're on your toes, and that overcorrection will probably put you onto that midfoot. The reason we want to keep the weight of the midfoot is because we're always stronger in straight lines. That when you start moving that center of gravity away from the center of the foot, you start having to apply extra force that isn't necessary. And your body is going to want to learn how to move that bar path in an efficient and linear manner, in a linear fashion. So a good way to do that is take a video camera directly to the side and watch that bar go up and down. And if you can, put a straight line on the screen, put something there so you can see exactly if that barbell is moving in pretty much a straight line. In perfect world, it's just going up and down in that straight bar path. That way you know you're moving in the most efficient way possible. And finally, last tip will be to simply squat more. I've noticed when back in the day I would probably only squat once a week. Now I'm squatting anywhere from 2 to 3 to maybe 4 times a week. And I think that frequency, that exposure to the movement has helped leaps and bounds, because not only are you able to exert more practice into that lift, you're able to also spread out the dosage of the squat. So rather than trying to be fatigued and hit out that last rep really heavily with poor form, you're able to come back refreshed each and every time, and you're able to drive a little bit more perfect practice into the big scheme of things, rather than trying to eke out some poor lifting technique at a really fatigued state. Is probably not the most ideal way to squat, or to learn how to squat and to improve that technique. So when I also say to increase squatting, you don't want to be doing heavy singles every single day. That's not what we mean when we say to increase the frequency of squatting. You want to increase the amount of times you squat, and that might not be a typical low bar back squat. You could increase the amount of squat accessories you do. So front squats, SS yoke squats, pause squats, tempo squats, pin squats, even leg pressing, belt squats, lunges, single squats, single leg pistol squats, Bulgarian split squats. So many different ways that you can increase the amount of times you work your legs throughout the week. And you don't want to do that maximally each and every time. This is why it'll help to have a coach or learn more about how to program, because you need to find that balance between stress and recovery. And that's the game we're playing with here. We need to stress the body enough to drive changes, but we can't stress it enough that we don't drive changes. You could squat heavy every single day, single rep max, and you're probably going to burn out before you get any good results. Or you might not, who knows. But a safe and proven and effective method is to dose that out and find that balance between minimum effective dose and maximal maximum recoverable volume. I got it. So there's the two ends of the spectrum. If I just squatted the empty bar once a week, didn't do anything, even if I squatted the bar every single day 10 times, that's not really going to drive the adaptations that we're looking for, trying to develop strength. So learn about it, read about it, really just study it, figure out how you can increase the squat frequency during the course of your training week. Just from one time, you want to do at least 2 to 3 times a week. It's one of the key movements for the body, and if it means dropping an extra set of curls, I would highly recommend that. Alright, so we just got done with the workout. Pretty out of breath. I cut down the rest periods for between this giant set, so we're kind of working in a more continuous fashion. Probably a 10-second break in between each movement, followed by a 60-second break in between each giant set. So something to help out with increasing cardio capacity without necessarily having to do that boring steady state cardio, although that is still quite beneficial for you to do. Nonetheless, we go through the workout today, increase the weights on the stiff leg deadlift. I didn't really touch the weight on the SS jerk squats, so not really too concerned there. But with all that being said, to wrap up the video, I think those 3 things: focus on your technique, really concentrate on your own body's awareness, so drive that bracing, drive that tension, keep the body in balance, and finally just increase the squatting frequency over the course of a week. Look up ways as to how you can drive up the frequency without driving up the stress too much. Obviously, when you first implement that, you are going to have some growing pains, as it were, because you're getting used to the increased volume. But think of dropping down the total amount of, think of dropping down the daily volume and increasing your weekly volume. So instead of doing, just hypothetically, instead of doing 5 by 5 on squats, think of doing, say, 2 by 5, 2 by 5, and 2 by 5. We've split up the squat session over multiple days, but we've also increased the tonnage and volume over the course of the week as well, without necessarily having to drive up daily stress. We're able to increase that frequency without driving up the stress too much, rather than trying to try to fit 6 by 5, 30 reps into one day. We're doing 30 reps over the course of 7 days, which has helped me. Might help you, might not. Try these techniques out. Hopefully they help you increase the squat from wherever you're at. I think they're good techniques, but they've helped me hit a 460 squat, working with, today at least, a 415 set of heavy triples. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you like what you see. Check out my previous training videos. I'll be doing this will be my next kind of series where I just give you some training tips along the way while I'm doing my own training. So this has been Selwyn from WynnStrength, and remember, a better life through strength.